And interestingly enough, like I think with the medication, I think it did help because it wasn't being on medication. It's not like you don't feel anything,
but it helps.
It helps. It's like those feelings that you're feeling are still there,
not as overwhelming,
but not as overwhelming, and you can still be functioning throughout your day. You know, you can still function throughout the day, do what you need to do, but you still have like a good like little pep in your step where you're not just feeling sad.
But with me, I was on it a little longer. I was on medication for 2 years, and I got to the point where I was numb. I didn't feel anything. I even had to talk to my therapist where I was like, I don't even feel empathetic. Like people would talk to me and I didn't know what to say or feel because I felt nothing, and I hated that feeling because you don't feel real. I never felt like a real person. And it was gross. And I remember the first medication I did ever try gave me this euphoric feeling of happiness that I've never felt in my life.
I think that's how it feels initially because I felt the same way. Only initially, though. I never felt like that again.
And then after that, I remember I looked for it in several medications that I tried. I felt like a guinea pig. I tried so many. And I was like, nope. And I even went back to it. I was like, maybe it's going to give me the same effect. Never again. And after that, I just felt numb. I felt like I was just like going through life numb like a zombie. Mm-hmm. You know, I showed up to work, did what I had to do, came back home, slept, no interest in nothing, didn't want to do anything, didn't want to go anywhere, nothing. Yeah. It's like me and the bed were like best friends. Don't ask me to do anything.
But you know, interestingly enough, I felt like when I was at a really low, you were good enough mentally to keep me afloat. And I felt like when you were at your low, I felt like I was in a good enough place to keep you afloat. Like, I don't feel like we were ever really low at the same time because I felt like that would have just been a recipe for disaster.
I would agree.
And I think as I was making progress, I constantly was making progress. And I was just kind of like, we would have conversations for hours.
But you see, I feel like that was like, I think, a wake-up call for me when you try to commit suicide where like, I need to do this for you. I need to be here for you. I had to. Because I feel like, what else? I feel like it's kind of like, you go into that fight or flight mode where like, no, there is no if, and, or buts. Whatever I have going on needs to be put to the side because it's just like, no, you know? And I felt like if anything after that did happen, I would have probably felt so guilty because it's like, no, my best friend.
But that's a lot. That's a lot to put on you, you know? I mean, I think in retrospect, I don't think I was thinking that at the time. That's a lot to put on a person. But I think that's where like having a really good support system is crucial. I would say crucial. Like it's a requirement because if you have nobody to talk to and you're alone and you just feel like, you know, it's so much, not that people can't get through it, I think they can, but it's so much harder. So I feel like you need at least one person to like be there for you and just support you and just kind of like help you through it. And, you know, I feel like the experience of just going to therapy could be like ongoing all the time. Like I could probably go to therapy today. There's been some things on my mind that I could be like, I can go to therapy for, you know? But that's just me, you know? And therapy might not be for everybody. That's the other thing. Like it's been useful for us and I think that was something that we needed, but it might not be for everybody.
I don't think about that. And I think that's where I hold, I think about it and I know it doesn't sound right, but I feel like that's where I hold them accountable, like, fuck, you know?
Well, you see, I feel like recently when I was watching one of the episodes of Red Table Talk, the Jada Pickett one, she talks about like expectations of people and it's not fair to have expectations.
No, and I've read about it.
So I think even just expecting people to act a certain way or have a certain expression or a certain like reaction, like that's not fair either.
No, and I know, and they even talk about just titles alone, like, you know. And I feel like I can't hold them to that because it's like they were going through something. They went through certain things where they just couldn't help us, and I get that, but I don't know. I think it's just something that I really wanted, and I think that's why I hold them to that standard. You know?
Yeah. I think I'm resentful for other reasons, though. I don't think that they could have done anything for me at all, to be honest. I don't think that was anywhere. Yeah, I mean, even now. I don't think that's anywhere like in their radar to be like, oh yeah, let me. No, I think in the ideal world, yeah. But, you know.
And it's funny because I feel like for me, the things that I wanted were simple.
I know.
very simple that costs nothing but time. And I feel like now, as a parent, I feel like those things are very important to give. The attention is very important.
Right, because this is time that we're never going to get back. This is time with our kids that we will never get back. And I think now, I think that's where my guilt comes in from time to time. It's like, okay, am I doing everything as a parent to make sure that my son feels loved, that he feels cared for, that he feels like he feels safe, that he can trust me? And I think it makes me like happy and sad at the same time, because I mean, maybe if I would have gotten it, I wouldn't be saying the things that I say today, but at the same time, I'm so happy because I'm just kind of like, I'm glad he has it. And I'm glad he doesn't have to experience any of what I went through to get to the point where you're like, no, I do feel it. And that was just because my mom showed me how much she cared. She, has always been there. And that's not something that I can say.
Yeah. No, and I think I see it through them and stuff like that. And I feel like, of course, the last thing we want is for any of them to experience the things we saw. Any of it. The fighting, the hiding, constantly moving, the arguing, being told
the violence, the abuse,
all of it, which sucked, to the extent that we normalized it.
Yeah, and I think that it's what we went through is a lot more common. It's a lot more common than just us, which is why I don't feel like our situation is very that unique. I think what makes our situation unique is like how we've dealt with it, and how we chose to come out stronger, and how we've dealt with the whole situation, which takes a lot of, I think, resilience and strength. And usually when I talk to people about like some of the things I've been through, people always hands down tell me like, Andy, you're so strong, and you're so resilient. But I feel like I don't have a choice. I have somebody that I need to raise. Like, what choice do I have?
That's true.
Either I'm going to do better and be like, this is what you deserve, because every child deserves to have a safe place where they grow up, and a safe household, and safe from violence and abuse and all of that. And I feel like that's the very least we can do for our kids.
Yeah.
And I feel like the things we deal with the kids now and the issues that come up are like nowhere near the things that we had to deal with.
No. I think we had to grow up quickly. I remember already by elementary, you had to start doing certain things around the house and behaving a certain way, because it's like that shit was not tolerated, and they were just like, nope. The expectations were really high. And I feel like, yeah, we got our chance to enjoy ourselves as kids, but then at the same time, you had to worry about like, well, they're arguing again. What's gonna happen now? Are the cops gonna come again? Or are they gonna hit us again? It was just like, it sucked. And what was the thing too? Is that the same things we went through, so did the neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I think growing up in the projects, like there was a lot of that everywhere. And we didn't talk about it. I think we just saw it and we would just stay quiet because it's so taboo to talk about, at least I felt at that time, it was so taboo to talk about like, how your parents were acting, how, my dad would like violently hit my sisters, or like my mom. I don't, it's funny because I feel like with my mom, she didn't start off as like hitting. I feel like she learned it from my dad, and then she became very violent in that way, where she started hitting us for punishment and just like hit us really hard unnecessarily for dumb, insignificant things that now I'm just kind of like, I got an ass beating for that? Shit.
Yeah. But then, those things those are things we saw growing up, so those are things we started doing with the kids, and then that's where we're just kind of like, whoa, hold on. And I will never forget, when you told me you sound like my mom, I was like, no. I was like, I can't have that. When I would yell, and she'll be like, why are you yelling? Why are you making a big deal? And then I had to stop and be like, no. Can't like
yelling because your kid spilled milk on the floor, or yelling because they made a mess, or yelling because the house is dirty, or yelling because
they're not listening,
they're having a tantrum, or like, those are all things that I think as parents we need to be prepared for, because that's what we signed up for. Like, no kid is gonna be like pristine, does everything you say, blah blah blah. Like, there's no perfect kid, and you know, I feel like I've had to have so much patience with Jacob. So in saying all of that, you know, therapy was instrumental with dealing with our own baggage, because I feel like it's not till you deal with whatever you have going on and you become a better person that you could become a better person to everyone else around you. And I think that that's like the key. The key. Like, you can't be, I don't believe I could be a good mom if I'm not good with myself first. Because if I have like all these issues, all these emotions, all these things going on, you project that to everyone else. So you could be mad about something internally and start yelling at each other for no reason, and you're just kind of like, wait, I'm not even mad at you. I'm mad about, you know, these things that I have going on inside.
And that's something that I struggled a lot with while I was going to therapy. I was projecting it a lot, and I would come to the conclusion where I'm like, wow, I'm really just mad at myself. Or I'm mad because I'm going, or not, I wouldn't say mad. It's just dealing with those emotions just came out like toxic, in a very toxic manner, like yelling or being always upset. And I'm just like, I hate these feelings, which pushed me even more to be like, I'm going to try harder to get through this and to get to the root of it. It took a while, but it was not easy because I felt like that was like my worst, you know. And my husband at that moment was great, like, to deal with all of that. It was, I felt like at one point I was just like all over the place. I would be good one day, you know, and I would be doing good.
I would have been like, girl, bye.
I would be good going to work, and then there was times where like I would show up to work twice a week, maybe at the most, on medication, trying to go to therapy, and it was just like, it was just all over the place.
Especially group therapy. And I think if you are hesitant to see a therapist, I would say do group therapy first. And let me tell you why. Group therapy, it's like kind of like an AA meeting. You're sitting in a circle, you're meeting all these other people with a bunch of different issues, really completely different from yours. And you get to hear other people's stories. And you don't necessarily have to talk, but you can just hear what everybody else is saying. And I remember I met this girl who was talking about how I think like two of her friends had overdosed on heroin or something. And she had her own issues too, and I think she was also a heroin addict. And I didn't feel like my situation was as terrible as I was thinking in my head. And yeah, and like a bunch of people were just sharing like what they were going through, and it's just kind of like, you're not alone. And it feels, I think going through depression feels like a very, very, very lonesome experience, but it's really not. And so many people go through it. And I feel like now as a society, we've gotten better. Like, I'm sure there's a lot more forums, there's a lot more places where it can be talked about. I don't think it's as good as it should be, but I feel like it's better in the sense where people are talking about it more. You know, celebrities and athletes and all kinds of people. And I feel like it's making more people comfortable to be like, okay, I need to deal with my stuff. Or it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah.
As taboo as it might be in like our culture. Because I know different cultures, you know, see mental illness differently. And I think that even within our own, it's like, within our own family, it's like, we never talked about it.
Yeah, or it's brought up like, you're not crazy, where are you going? And it's just like,
right, like you only need to be crazy to go to therapy. And it's like, no, there's a huge misconception about what it means to go to therapy and what that looks like for different people.
Or people initially think that as soon as you start going, you need to be put on medication. That is, no, those are all your own choices.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Suggested, but nobody's gonna force you to do it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because they didn't make me go on medication, but she was just like, based on my evaluation, you should be on it. You know?
And I actually thought that some of these doctors were gonna like try to force certain things down my throat, and actually I've had a very good experience with it at Kaiser. I think I've met by far some of the best ones that I really liked, and that really changed my perspective in a lot of ways.
My therapist was really good at teaching me really good coping mechanisms, with how to deal with, you know, both everyday stuff and like my past, and how to, you know.
I feel like the only reason why I went back is because I had a different transition in my life where I was like, I didn't know how to handle, and I was just like, oh wow, this is new. You know, I've learned how to deal with all these other things about myself, but this was new, and
What was it?
The divorce. That wasn't easy. And I felt like it was these new feelings, these new emotions where I was just like, wow, how do I handle this? And that's eventually what led me back to it. And it helped. It helped, and I feel like it's really nice to be like, it's there.
Yeah, and therapy is one of those things where it's like, well, if you feel like you need to go, you go, or, you know. And when mine ended, I remember sitting in her office and just being like, what am I going to talk about? I have nothing to talk about. And I remember that last session, it was just kind of like, there's a lot of like just moments of silence. And I kind of knew, I was like, I don't need to come anymore. Like, I feel like she had done a really good job in just guiding me and letting me just talk through all my trauma and everything. And I think the last thing I would say about therapy is it's a very slow process. Very slow process. I mean, I feel like even now, like, yes, I don't have to go through therapy, but there's so many things about myself that I'm still working on. And therapy and just kind of like, or not therapy, healing, wanting to heal yourself is such a slow process. It's like watching water drip slowly out of a cup, slowly, like one drop at a time. And that's kind of like how it feels like to heal. Like, it's not quick, it's ugly, it's really ugly. You know, there's so many parts of yourself that maybe you don't want to see or maybe you don't want to deal with, but you have to, I think, in order to get to a better place. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. But I think if a person really wants to change or they really want to like better something about themselves, then you have to go through that process. Like, therapy's not easy.
And I remember I fought it sometimes. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm like, no. And then at times I would go back and I'm like, who am I kidding? I need this.
I feel like the most profound thing I've realized in going through therapy and just like everything I've been through is like, you need to be kind to yourself. And you have to be understanding and you have to be compassionate with yourself and being like, okay, it's not the end of the world.
You know, it was one of the first therapists that I really liked was she asked me, she's like, can you describe yourself in 5 words? And I was like, what? She's like, describe yourself. She's like, you know, part of therapy is learning again who you are. And I would look at her and I'm like, I don't. And I feel like now when I think about it, I'm like, yes, I could describe myself. How would you describe yourself?
In what, 5 words?
5 words.
Okay. I would say resilient, intelligent, quirky, smart. Smart.
Intelligent, yeah.
Oh, okay. Responsible and punctual.
Oh my god, that's so funny. I think for me, I would say I'm very nurturing. I'm funny. I'm eccentric. I'm weird. And I'm very loving, low key.
Not for display though.
No.
Not always on display.
No. But if I like you, I just might hug you.
I just might hug you. It's so funny you bring up hugging. So, in our family, Michelle and I are not huggers. It doesn't come out naturally. We don't go around like just hugging people. But it's funny because my little sister is a hugger, and then our sister that's older is also a hugger. And it's like, it's funny because it's like, well, we all grew up in the same household, but the habits that I think that some of us picked up and the things that we internalize and things that like we actually, you know, do is really different. Like,
we ask each other for hugs, or I'll be like, I need a hug.
Yeah.
You know, it's different with
I'm
kids.
really drawn to people who are huggers. Like, one of my ex-managers, ex-bosses was like, she was a hugger, and I loved it. I love that shit. But me, naturally, I'm not.
I feel like I think
I'm naturally not, and she's even less than that.
But you know, one thing that I've learned from reading, because I would also read a lot of books on like, you know, healing and so forth, was to surround yourself with people that have qualities that you don't. And I feel like that's something that I always keep at the top of my mind. I want to surround myself with people that are quirky, that are very loving, and that are out there, because I feel like when you're around them enough, you start picking up on their habits.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that to me is at the top of my head. I want to find people that are quite the opposite.
But we're not huggers. We're not huggers. Not when we leave. I think the only time we hug is when we are at the airport. I think that's the only time that could feel really, like, if one of us is leaving.
Or if one of us is crying.
Or crying. But yeah, it shouldn't be that way. I mean, I think you should tell people that you love and hug them and kiss them. And it doesn't come out of us naturally.
It's funny because it's like I feel like we know it, we feel it.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's kind of one of those things where you're like, wow,
it goes unsaid.
I don't need to say
Yeah.
it, you know. But with the kids, we're like, oh my god, I love you, hug me, kiss me, I want to smother you. But with us, it's I don't
Especially
know,
with the
it's
babies.
weird. Oh, especially love from babies. Oh
With the
my
babies.
god, it's the best kind of love.
You know, and it's interesting because I feel like I've only hugged my mom, or like those interactions with my mom are like very limited that I could think of in my head. Much less even her like telling me that she loved me. Yeah, it's you know,
It sucks.
it does. It does suck. We hope you have enjoyed this video. Hopefully you've learned some things stick. Just as much as we've enjoyed making this video, please share your stories, share some comments, share maybe some of your struggles, some of the things that you've been through in our comments below, through email, Instagram, whatever you feel comfortable with. Please share. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you in our next video. Bye.
Bye.